My name is Eleanor Wright, and I'm 78 years old. I've lived through wars, heartbreak, and the slow, quiet loneliness that comes when the people you love the most slowly stop loving you back. But nothing could have prepared me for the day I discovered that my only daughter, the one I had given my life for, was trying to kill me. Quietly, slowly, with pills that were supposed to keep me alive. The day I saw her hand trembling as she slipped those strange capsules into my pillbox, I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. It wasn't a mistake. She looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then she whispered to herself, "Soon this will all be mine." That night I didn't sleep. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. I lay awake replaying every moment of the past few weeks. Her sudden visits, the fake sweetness in her voice, her questions about my will. It was all making sense now. She wasn't here to take care of me. She was here to speed up the clock. And she didn't know that I had seen everything. My body might have been frail, but my mind was sharper than ever. I needed to think and I needed to act. The next morning, I pretended nothing had happened. I swallowed the pills she gave me, but only after hiding the real ones under my tongue and spitting out her poison when she left the room. My daughter, Lisa, smiled like a wolf when I told her I was feeling weaker. She didn't know that behind my trembling hands, I was already plotting her downfall. But how? How could an old woman like me turn the tables on her own flesh and blood without her catching on? I remembered something she had bragged about months ago. How she had destroyed her ex-husband David in the divorce, leaving him with nothing but debt and heartbreak. She had gloated, saying, "That man will die alone, penniless." Her cruelty had burned itself into my memory. And that's when an idea sparked in me. If she wanted my fortune so badly, maybe it was time she learned what it felt like to have it slip through her fingers. Over the following weeks, I started acting weaker, slower, and more confused than ever. Lisa was convinced her plan was working. I saw her grin when she thought I was too tired to notice. Meanwhile, I made secret visits to my lawyer, using the little strength I had left to arrange something she could never undo. Changed everything. The house, the land, the savings. All of it was signed over to one name. David Miller, her ex-husband. The man she had thrown away like garbage would now inherit every single thing she wanted. The day the new will was finalized, I placed the signed papers in a sealed envelope and hid them where only my lawyer could retrieve them when the time came. I walked out of that office trembling, not from fear, but from the thrill of knowing that I had outsmarted her. Every step I took back to my house was a silent victory. Lisa's visits became more frequent, and so did her attempts to manipulate me. She would sigh dramatically and say things like, "You know, Mom, maybe it's time you start thinking about what happens when you're gone. I'll take care of everything, I promise." I would nod, smile weakly, and say, "I know, sweetheart." Inside I was laughing. She had no idea that every word she spoke was digging her own grave. Then one night she made her move. I caught her pouring something into my tea, something that smelled bitter and strange. I confronted her and she stammered, saying she was just adding honey. I played dumb, sipping it slowly while keeping my eyes locked on hers. That night I didn't drink it. Instead, I poured it into the sink and watched the liquid swirl away like the last bit of trust one ever had for her. The next morning I called my lawyer and confirmed that everything was in place. The plan was set. Lisa thought she was winning, but the truth was, her victory was nothing but an illusion. What happened next shattered everything I thought I knew about my daughter. She didn't stop at poison. She escalated, and what she did one night almost cost me my life. Stay tuned because you won't believe what she tried next. If you're hooked on this story, don't miss what's coming in the next chapter. Like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the shocking twists ahead. The night after I poured that poison tea down the sink, I sat by my bedroom window and watched the moonlight fall across the yard. It was so peaceful out there, the kind of quiet that makes you think life is still good. But my heart was pounding because I knew that peace was a lie. My own daughter was plotting my death under my roof, and I had to stay one step ahead. Lisa came the next morning with a tray of breakfast: eggs, toast, orange juice. She wore her sweetest smile. "Morning, Mom," she said. Her voice was honey, but her eyes were ice. I pretended to be too tired to sit up, letting her feed me like some helpless old woman. Inside, I wanted to spit the food back in her face. But I needed her to believe I was weak, that her plan was working. That was the only way to win this game. After breakfast, she lingered in my room, fiddling with my pillbox. "You're almost out of these," she said, shaking the container. "Don't worry, I'll pick up more." Her fingers brushed mine when she handed it back, and for a split second, I swear I felt her pulse quicken. She was nervous. But let her be. The more she thought I was in the palm of her hand, the harder she would fall when the truth came out. Later that day, I called my old friend Margaret. She's the only one I can trust. She's known me for 50 years, through everything. I told her what was happening, about the pills, the tea, the fake concern. She gasped. "Eleanor, you have to call the police," she said. But I couldn't. Not yet. If I went to the police without proof, Lisa would twist it all around, make me sound crazy. No, I needed her to reveal her true self first. I needed evidence. That night, I hid a tiny camera in the kitchen. It was one of those cheap ones I bought years ago, still working just fine. I set it to record every time there was motion. I also left my phone in recording mode whenever she came into my room. My hands were shaking as I set it up, not because I was scared, but because I was angry. Angry at the daughter I raised with my own 2 hands. Angry that she thought I was too old and weak to fight back. The next few days were a slow-burning nightmare. Lisa kept coming, each visit sweeter than the last. She brought flowers, cooked dinner, cleaned the house. She acted like the perfect daughter. But every time I turned my back, I saw her slipping powders into my food, replacing pills, whispering under her breath about how soon she'd have the house. Each word cut me like a knife, but I stayed quiet, played along, because I was building something bigger than her lies. I was building the truth. Then one afternoon, while she was in the bathroom, my camera caught her pouring a clear liquid into my water pitcher. My hands shook as I replayed the footage. Finally had proof. I saved it on 3 different devices just in case. One copy went to my lawyer, another to Margaret, and the last I kept hidden in my sewing box. I wasn't going to let her destroy me without a fight. When Lisa came back into the room, I smiled at her and said, "You know, sweetheart, I've been thinking about changing my will." Her eyes lit up, just for a second, before she hid it with another fake smile. "Oh, Mom, that's not necessary. You don't need to worry about those things." I nodded, playing the fool. "You're right. But I still think about it sometimes." That night she stayed over. She said it was because she was worried about me, but I knew it was because she wanted to make sure I drank that water. I didn't. I dumped it out when she wasn't looking. Instead, I took a sip of the untouched bottle I kept hidden in my dresser. While she slept, I sat awake in the dark, planning my next move. The next morning, she made pancakes and forced a plate into my hands. I pretended to eat, but every bite I chewed, I spit into a napkin when she turned her back. She didn't notice. She thought I was growing weaker. She thought she was winning. Meanwhile, I was making calls, arranging meetings, tightening the noose around her plans. 2 days later, I met with David, her ex-husband. I hadn't spoken to him in years, not since the divorce where she ruined him. He looked surprised to see me, sitting there with my cane, but he listened as I told him everything. His face hardened, and when I finished, he said, "Eleanor, I'll do whatever you need." I slid the papers across the table to him, the ones that would make him the sole heir of everything she thought was hers. His hands trembled as he signed. It was done. When I got home, Lisa was waiting on the porch. "Where were you, Mom?" she asked, her voice sweet, but her eyes sharp. I told her I was just out for a walk. She didn't believe me, I could tell. But she didn't push it. Not then. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the girl I once rocked to sleep, the little girl who used to say, "I love you, Mommy." Where had that little girl gone? Was she ever real? Or had she been replaced by this cold, greedy stranger long ago? I was pulled from my thoughts by a noise downstairs. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. I held my breath, clutching the edge of my blanket. Someone was in the house, And I knew it wasn't a burglar. I grabbed the phone and started recording. The door to my room creaked open, and there she was, standing in the dark with something in her hand. What she held made my blood run cold. You won't believe what she tried to do next. Stay with me for the next chapter, because the story is only getting darker. If this story has you hooked, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next shocking twist. The door creaked wider, and the faint light from the hallway caught the object in Lisa's hand. A syringe. My heart nearly stopped. I lay perfectly still, my breaths shallow, pretending to be asleep. I could hear her whisper to herself. Just a little more. Just one more dose and it'll all be over. She stepped closer, the floorboards groaning under her weight. I forced my body to stay limp, my eyes closed but alert. The syringe gleamed as she approached my bedside. I could smell the faint chemical scent of whatever she had filled it with. Poison. My daughter was standing over me, ready to end my life for money. When she leaned in, I moved. With all the strength I could muster, I rolled to the side, knocking her arm away. The syringe clattered to the floor. "What are you doing, Lisa?" I screamed, my voice shaking with both fear and fury. She froze, her face pale and wild. "Mom, it's not what you think," she stammered. But her trembling hands told the truth. "It's exactly what I think," I spat. "You were going to kill me." She fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "No, I just wanted to help you go peacefully," she cried. Every word from her mouth was a lie. I reached for the phone I had hidden under my blanket, the one that had been recording the entire encounter. I held it up. "I have everything, Lisa. Every word, every move. Do you hear me? You're done." She lunged for it, but I was faster. I swung my cane at her arm, the crack of the wood against her skin echoing in the room. She yelped in pain and backed away, clutching her wrist. For a moment, she looked at me like a stranger, like she didn't even recognize me. "You think you're clever, Mom," she hissed. "You think you can beat me. You're old. Or weak. You won't last long." I stared at her with a calm I didn't feel. "You're right, I am old. But I'm not weak. Not yet. And you'll regret the day you underestimated me." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I locked it immediately, my hands trembling. I barely slept that night. I knew she wasn't done. If anything, this had made her more dangerous. The next morning she didn't come back. I thought maybe she'd given up, but deep down I knew better. Evil doesn't just vanish, it waits. I spent the day reinforcing my plan. I met again with my lawyer, showed him the video, and handed over more evidence. He promised me everything was in place. "When the time comes," he said, "she won't get a single penny. She'll get exactly what she deserves." That night I called David again. I told him to be ready, that things were escalating. He sounded concerned. "Eleanor, maybe you should leave the house. Come stay with me." But I couldn't. Not yet. I had to see this through. I had to watch her plan crumble right in front of her. 2 days passed in tense silence. Then, just as I was starting to wonder if she'd left town, Lisa returned. But this time she wasn't alone. She brought 2 men with her. Men I'd never seen before, both rough-looking and cold-eyed. My heart sank as I watched them from the window, unloading boxes from a truck. What was she doing now? When she walked in, she was smiling like nothing had happened. "Hi, Mom," she said sweetly. "These are just some movers. I'm helping you declutter." Declutter? My house wasn't cluttered. She was trying to empty it out, to strip it bare while I was still alive. As they carried out furniture, I stood in the doorway, gripping my cane so hard my knuckles turned white. "You have no right," I said. "Oh, Mom, don't be dramatic," she laughed. "You don't need all this stuff. You're old. You should live simply." Every word was a dagger. She was robbing me in broad daylight, and she thought she could get away with it. I took photos, videos, everything. She didn't notice. She was too busy directing the men, too busy humming to herself as she took pieces of my life away. By the time they were done, my house looked empty. Lisa kissed my cheek on her way out. her voice dripping with false concern. "Get some rest, Mom. You'll need it." When the door closed, I collapsed into my chair, shaking. This wasn't just greed anymore. This was war. And I was going to win. The following evening, I heard her car pull up again. But this time she wasn't humming. This time she was yelling into her phone, furious. "What do you mean he has the will?" she shouted. "How could she?" She stopped when she saw me watching from the window. Her face twisted into something dark, something I'll never forget. She slammed her phone shut and marched up to the door. "What did you do, Mom?" she demanded. I smiled, the first real smile in days. "You'll find out soon enough." Her eyes burned with rage, and for the first time, I think she realized she wasn't the one in control anymore. That night, she didn't try to hide her intentions. I heard her downstairs, pacing, whispering to herself, opening and closing drawers. She was searching for something. Proof of the will, maybe the evidence I'd gathered. She didn't know everything was already in safe hands. Around midnight, I heard her footsteps on the stairs. Low. Heavy. She was coming for me again. I grabbed my phone, ready. The door opened, and she stepped inside holding something that glinted in the dim light. It wasn't a syringe this time. It was a knife. What happened next will leave you speechless. Don't miss the next chapter because everything is about to explode. If you're following this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the shocking twists ahead. The knife caught the light, and for a moment, it blinded me. Lisa stood there, her chest rising and falling with a rage I couldn't recognize anymore. She was no longer my daughter. She was a stranger with my child's face. Her voice was low, shaking, almost animal. "Where is it, Mom?" she hissed. "Where is the will? You think you're so clever, hiding it from me. You think you can make me look like a fool." My hand tightened around my cane. My heart thumped in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "It's safe," I said. "Safer than you'll ever be." She raised the knife, her fingers trembling. "You'll give it to me or what, Lisa?" I cut her off, my voice louder now. "You'll kill me. Your own mother. Do you think you'll ever see a dime after that? Do you think you'll get away with it?" For a second, her face softened, as if my words had pierced through whatever darkness had taken root in her. But then the coldness returned, harder than ever. She stepped closer, the knife shaking in her hand. I took a slow step back, buying time. "Go ahead," I said, my voice shaking but defiant. "Do it. But know this, you've already lost." Her eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" I smiled, though my knees were trembling. "Everything you wanted, everything you've been trying to steal, it's already gone. You'll never have it. You'll never touch it." She froze, her arm still raised. "You're lying." "Am I?" I said, leaning on my cane with all the strength I could gather. "Ask your ex-husband. Ask David. He knows the truth. He owns everything now." The color drained from her face, and for the first time, she looked truly afraid. The knife wavered, her grip loosening. You wouldn't," she whispered. "I did," I said simply. "And there's nothing you can do to change it." With a cry of rage, she dropped the knife to the floor and stumbled back. "No. You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter." Tears welled in my eyes, but I stood my ground. "You stopped being my daughter the day you tried to kill me." She stared at me, her face twisting with fury and desperation. Then she turned and ran out of the room, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I collapsed onto my bed, my whole body trembling. I had survived another night, but I knew it wasn't over. She wasn't done. The next day the police came. My friend Margaret had called them after I sent her the recording of Lisa with the knife. But Lisa was gone. She had vanished, leaving behind only her threats and the mess she made of my house. The police searched for her, but she was clever. She knew how to hide. Meanwhile, I stayed inside with the doors locked, the curtains drawn. Every shadow outside looked like her. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. A week passed. Then two. Life almost started to feel normal again, but deep down I knew she was out there, watching, waiting. And then, one evening, I found an envelope slipped under my door. My hands shook as I picked it up. Inside was a single piece of paper with 4 words scrawled across it in red ink. "You'll regret this, Mom." That night I couldn't sleep. The house felt like it was breathing around me, every sound amplified. I clutched my phone, my only lifeline. The thought of her creeping back into my home made my stomach twist. The following morning I called David. "It's starting," I told him. He came to see me that afternoon. He promised he'd stay close, that he wouldn't let anything happen to me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small glimmer of safety. But safety is a fragile thing. 2 days later, I woke up to the sound of glass shattering downstairs. My heart pounded as I grabbed my cane and phone. The house was dark, too quiet. I crept down the stairs, every step creaking beneath me. In the living room, the window was broken, shards of glass glittering on the floor. The curtains fluttered in the cold night air. And in the middle of the room, a shadow moved. Lisa stood there, her hair wild, her eyes gleaming with madness. "You thought you could hide from me," she said, her voice trembling with rage. Before I could answer, she lunged. What happened next changed everything forever. Stay with me for the next chapter, because this is where the battle truly begins. If you're still following this story, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the heart-stopping twists ahead. Lisa lunged at me with the force of someone who had nothing left to lose. My cane was the only thing between us. I swung it hard, connecting with her shoulder. She screamed and staggered back, clutching the spot, her face twisting with rage. "Stop this, Lisa," I shouted, my voice trembling but strong. "It's over." "It's not over until you're gone," she screamed, lunging again. This time she grabbed my wrist, forcing me against the wall. The pain shot up my arm, but I refused to let go of my phone. I pressed the emergency call button, letting it ring on speaker. She noticed. Her eyes widened with panic. "Who are you calling?" she snarled, trying to knock the phone away. "Someone who will end this," I hissed back. The call connected and I shouted, "Help! She's here!" Before Lisa managed to slap the phone out of my hand. It hit the floor, the voice on the other end yelling my name. Lisa hesitated, fear flashing across her face. That moment of hesitation was my chance. I shoved her back with all my strength, and she stumbled over the broken glass, cutting her hands. "You think you're clever, Mom," she spat, blood dripping from her palms. "You think you've won because you changed the will. You've ruined my life. I have nothing because of you." I was panting, gripping my cane like a weapon. "You ruined your own life, Lisa. Not me. You chose this path." The sound of sirens grew louder outside. Lisa's eyes darted toward the window. She was trapped. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as she looked at me one last time. Her expression a mixture of hatred and desperation. "This isn't over," she hissed before bolting through the broken window, disappearing into the night just as the police burst in. The officers rushed to my side, asking if I was hurt. I shook my head, though my hands were trembling. I explained everything, showed them the videos, the recordings, the threatening note. They searched for her, but once again, Lisa slipped through their fingers. She was a shadow, always one step ahead. David arrived minutes later, his face pale with worry. "Eleanor, are you all right?" he asked, kneeling beside me. "I'm fine," I whispered, though my voice cracked. "But she's not done. I can feel it." The police promised to keep watch, but after they left, the house felt colder than ever. David stayed with me that night, sleeping on the couch with one eye open. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening for any sign of her. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the tension eased. I started to believe maybe she had finally given up. I began to breathe again, to live again. But deep down, a part of me knew this peace wouldn't last. One morning I went out to get the mail. There was only one envelope with no return address. I opened it slowly, and inside was a single photograph. It was of me, taken through my bedroom window while I slept. On the back, in red ink, were the words, "I'm closer than you think." My knees nearly gave out. David grabbed the photo from my trembling hands and cursed under his breath. "We need to leave, Eleanor. She's stalking you." But I shook my head. "No. I won't run from her. This is my home. If she wants a war, she'll get one." The next day I met with my lawyer again. I made sure every document was airtight, every asset protected. I even arranged for a video testimony, just in case she managed to silence me. My words would live on, exposing her no matter what. Lisa's appearances became more erratic. Sometimes I'd see her car parked down the street, engine running. Other times I'd find small things moved in the house. An open drawer, a light left on. She was letting me know she was there, playing with my mind. Then came the night of the fire. I woke to the smell of smoke, my heart pounding. Flames licked the edges of the curtains in the living room. I screamed for David, and we both rushed to put it out with the extinguishers the police had left us. The fire department arrived just in time to stop the house from burning down completely. The chief pulled me aside. "Ma'am, this was no accident. Someone poured accelerant around the window." I didn't need to ask who. The police launched a full investigation, but Lisa was nowhere to be found. She had vanished again, leaving only chaos behind. But this time she had gone too far. This was attempted murder, and the law was closing in. Despite the danger, I refused to back down. I had survived too much to let her win. I gathered every piece of evidence, every recording, every threatening message. I was ready to face her, even if it meant staring death in the face. And then one stormy night she came back. I heard the door creak open and footsteps approaching. David grabbed the baseball bat he kept nearby, and I held my cane tight. The power went out, plunging the house into darkness. Lightning flashed, and in that brief light, I saw her standing in the doorway, drenched from the rain, her eyes glowing with madness. "This ends tonight," she said, stepping inside. What she did next would leave scars that never healed. Don't miss the next chapter, because everything is about to erupt in ways you won't believe. If you're hooked on this story, like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the shocking climax that's coming. The storm roared outside as Lisa stepped fully into the house, rain dripping from her hair and clothes. She looked unrecognizable, gaunt, with dark circles under her eyes and a twisted smile that sent chills down my spine. Lightning illuminated her face, and for a moment, I swore I was staring into the eyes of a stranger, not the daughter I once cradled. David raised the bat, his stance firm. "Don't take another step, Lisa," he warned. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands trembling. Lisa laughed, a sound that was hollow and broken. "Oh, David," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "Still trying to play the hero? You think you can protect her? You couldn't even protect yourself when I ruined your life." David's jaw tightened. "That was the past. Tonight this ends." She tilted her head, her eyes flicking to me. "Mom, you really think giving everything to him will save you? You think the man I destroyed will keep you safe? You're both pathetic." I stepped forward despite my shaking knees. "You need help, Lisa. This isn't you." Her laughter echoed through the dark room. "This is me, Mom. The real me. And the real me takes what she wants." Before I could react, she lunged at David, tackling him to the floor. The bat rolled away, clattering under the table. They struggled, grunting and cursing as they fought. I grabbed my cane and swung it with all my might, hitting her in the side. She screamed and shoved David off, turning her rage toward me. "You think you're tough now, old woman," she hissed, charging at me. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. She grabbed my wrist, twisting it until I cried out. Pain shot up my arm, but I refused to let go of the cane. I jabbed it into her stomach, knocking the wind out of her. She fell to her knees, gasping. David scrambled to his feet, grabbing the bat. "Get away from her," he shouted, holding it high. Lisa looked up, her face contorted with fury. "You'll regret this," she spat before bolting toward the door. David ran after her, but she was fast. By the time he reached the porch, she had vanished into the storm. We stood there, breathing heavily, soaked in sweat and fear. The storm outside seemed to calm, but inside my heart was still raging. The police arrived shortly after. We explained everything, but once again Lisa had disappeared. They promised to find her, but I knew by now she was always one step ahead. Over the next few days, I lived in constant fear. I jumped at every noise, every shadow. The police patrolled the neighborhood, but I knew that wouldn't stop her. She was obsessed, consumed by hatred and greed. David stayed by my side, never leaving me alone. His presence gave me strength, but even he admitted, "Eleanor, she's dangerous. We need to be ready for anything." Then, one afternoon, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a single burned photograph of me and Lisa when she was a child. Written across the photo in ash-black letters were the words, "If I can't have it, no one will." That night, the nightmares started. I dreamt of her standing over me with a knife, whispering those same words. I woke in cold sweats, clutching the sheets. The next morning, David and I made a decision. We would lure her out, force her to face the truth, and end this once and for all. With the help of the police, we set up cameras around the house and a plan to catch her in the act. For days, nothing happened. The silence was almost worse than the attacks. Then, on the fifth night, she returned. I woke to the sound of the back door creaking open. The cameras were recording, the police were on standby, and David was ready. I pretended to sleep as she crept into my room. She stood over me, breathing heavily, her silhouette outlined by the faint moonlight. She reached into her coat and pulled out something metallic. It wasn't a knife this time. It was a gun. My heart froze. I stayed still, every muscle screaming to run. David stepped out of the shadows, shouting, "Drop it, Lisa." The lights snapped on, blinding her. She spun around, aiming the gun at him. "Don't move," she screamed. Her hands shook, but her finger tightened on the trigger. Before she could fire, red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Police stormed the house, guns drawn. "Drop the weapon," they yelled. Lisa screamed and fired a shot into the ceiling. The sound was deafening. They tackled her to the ground, prying the gun from her hands as she kicked and screamed. "You can't do this to me. It's mine. It's all mine," she cried as they dragged her out in handcuffs. I collapsed into David's arms, shaking uncontrollably. It was over, or so I thought. But as they took her away, she turned her head and shouted, "This isn't the end, Mom. You'll see me again." I wanted to believe it was truly over, but a part of me knew she wasn't finished. 3 days later, the police called. Lisa had escaped custody during a transfer to a psychiatric facility. She was out there again, and this time she was more dangerous than ever. What she did next would shatter every ounce of safety I thought I had left. Don't miss the next chapter, because the storm hasn't even reached its peak. If you're gripped by this story, like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next shocking twist that will leave you breathless. The call from the police came at dawn. I remember gripping the phone so hard my fingers went numb as the officer's voice filled my ear. "Mrs. Wright, your daughter has escaped. She overpowered a guard during transport. We're doing everything we can to find her, but you need to be extremely cautious." My stomach twisted into knots. I hung up and sat in silence, the morning light creeping through the curtains like an unwanted intruder. David entered the room, reading my expression before I could say a word. "She's out, isn't she?" he asked quietly. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. We spent the rest of the day fortifying the house, locking windows, checking cameras, double-bolting every door. David stayed close, his jaw set in determination, but I could see the worry in his eyes. "Eleanor, she's desperate now," he said. "People like her, when they've lost everything, they're capable of anything." Night fell and the house felt like a trap. The wind howled through the trees, the kind of sound that makes you feel watched. I tried to sleep, but every creak of the floorboards made me sit up, clutching my cane. Around midnight, the security cameras caught movement in the yard. A figure darted between the trees, too fast to be an animal. David grabbed the baseball bat, his knuckles white. "Stay here," he whispered. "No," I said, my voice firm despite my trembling. "We face her together." The motion lights flicked on, illuminating the yard. There she was, Lisa, standing at the edge of the trees, rain dripping from her hair, her eyes glowing with something wild. She stepped into the light slowly, her hands empty but her presence terrifying. "Mom," she called, her voice eerily calm. "Let me in. I just want to talk." David shouted from the doorway. "Stay where you are, Lisa. The police are on their way." She laughed softly, tilting her head. "Oh, David. Always the protector. But you can't protect her forever. You can't stop me." The sirens were faint in the distance, but Lisa wasn't waiting. She charged at the house, her fists pounding on the door. "Open it, Mom. Open it now," she screamed, her voice cracking with rage. The door rattled under her blows. I stood frozen, memories flashing through my mind. Her first steps, her laughter as a child, the way she used to hold my hand. How did we get here? The police arrived just as the doorframe began to splinter. They pulled her away, but she fought like a wild animal, kicking and biting. "You can't stop me. She's mine. Everything is mine," she shrieked as they cuffed her and forced her into the back of the squad car. I watched through the window, tears streaming down my face. The officers assured us she would be taken to a high-security facility this time. David hugged me tightly, whispering, "It's over now, Eleanor." It has to be. But the next morning I found something chilling. On the porch, where she had stood the night before, was a small box wrapped in a piece of cloth. Inside was one of my wedding rings, the one I'd lost years ago. A note was tucked beneath it, written in Lisa's jagged handwriting. "I was inside your house while you slept. You'll never see me coming." My knees buckled. David caught me before I fell. "She was here," he said, his voice shaking with fury. The police were called again, but there was nothing they could do except increase patrols. Lisa had somehow slipped past every lock, every camera, every precaution. The thought of her creeping into my room while I slept made my blood run cold. Over the next few days, the tension was unbearable. I barely ate, barely slept. David stayed alert, keeping a weapon nearby at all times. We were living in a nightmare, waiting for the next move. Then came the night of the storm, the worst one yet. Thunder cracked, lightning flashed, and the power went out. The house was plunged into darkness. David grabbed a flashlight, but the beam barely pierced the pitch black. That's when we heard it. A voice, soft and mocking, coming from somewhere inside the house. "Mom, where are you?" My heart stopped. Lisa was inside. David shoved me toward the safe room we had prepared, whispering, "Stay here and don't move." But I grabbed his arm. "No. We end this tonight." The voice grew closer, the sound of her footsteps echoing through the hall. We moved silently, following the faint glow of the flashlight, until we saw her silhouette at the end of the corridor. She was holding something, a crowbar. "You think you can hide from me?" she taunted, swinging it against the wall. "You think you can take what's mine?" David stepped forward, raising the bat. "It's over, Lisa. Drop it." She turned to him, smiling that same twisted smile. "You're in my way, David." Before she could swing, the flashlight flickered and died, plunging us into darkness. The only sound was the rain pounding against the windows and the thud of footsteps as she rushed toward us. In that pitch-black hallway, chaos erupted. Shouts, crashes, the sound of wood splintering. I felt hands grab me, cold and strong. I screamed, swinging my cane blindly. Something heavy crashed to the floor, followed by silence. The lights snapped back on just as the police stormed in. Lisa was on the floor, unconscious, the crowbar lying next to her. They cuffed her quickly, dragging her away as she groaned, barely conscious. "This time she's not getting out," an officer promised. But as they loaded her into the car, she lifted her head, her eyes locking on mine. Her voice was weak but chilling. "I'll be back, Mom. You'll never be safe." As the car disappeared into the night, I collapsed into David's arms, sobbing. It felt like the end, but deep down I knew it wasn't. Lisa was like a storm, you could survive it, but it always came back stronger. The next morning, I received a call from the police. Lisa had been transferred to a psychiatric prison, heavily guarded. They assured me she would never escape again. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe. But then, a week later, I received a letter from an unknown sender. Inside was a single sentence. I told you, I'm closer than you think. What followed would turn my world upside down, because Lisa had allies and they were coming for me. Stay with me for the next chapter, where the darkest betrayal yet will be revealed, and the fight for survival reaches its boiling point. If this story has you holding your breath, like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the shocking twists that lie ahead. The letter in my hands trembled as much as my fingers did. I sat at the kitchen table staring at those words over and over. I'm closer than you think. It wasn't just Lisa anymore. Someone else was helping her. Someone out there wanted to see me fall just as badly as she did. David stormed into the room when he saw my face. "What now?" he asked, snatching the letter from me. His jaw tightened as he read it. "She has people on the outside. This isn't just about her anymore, Eleanor." We called the police again, but their answer was the same. "We're investigating," they said. "We have her locked away. She can't reach you." Yet I could feel her presence like a shadow creeping under the door. Over the next few days, strange things began happening. Packages arrived with no return address. One contained a dead bird, another a burnt photo of David and me, and the last one held a cracked pocket watch that used to belong to my late husband. Each item was a message, and I understood it loud and clear. She's still in control. David suggested we leave town, but I refused. "If I run, she wins," I said. "This is my home. I won't abandon it." One stormy night, because it's always the storms that bring the worst, I was reading in bed when the power cut out. Darkness swallowed the house. David grabbed the flashlight and went to check the breaker. I stayed put, clutching my phone. Minutes passed. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of the front door creaking open. My breath hitched. "David!" I whispered into the darkness, but there was no answer. A cold voice came instead, dripping with malice. "Miss me, Mom?" My heart stopped. Lisa couldn't be here. She was supposed to be locked away. But as lightning flashed outside, I saw her silhouette standing in the hallway. Calm, steady, and terrifying. How did you get out?" I stammered. He chuckled low. "You think bars can hold me. You think you're safe because some judge says so. I told you, I'm closer than you think." Behind her, a figure stepped into view, one of the guards from the psychiatric prison. His face was cold and expressionless. He was helping her. My stomach dropped. She had corrupted someone inside to break her out. David appeared from behind with the bat, shouting, "Get away from her!" But the guard lunged first, knocking the bat from his hands. A fight broke out, loud and brutal, crashing into furniture. Lisa moved toward me as chaos erupted, her eyes blazing with hatred. "Why did you do it, Mom?" she spat. "Why give everything to him? Why not me?" I gripped my cane tightly, forcing myself to stand. "Because he never tried to kill me, Lisa. Because he's a better person than you'll ever be." Her face twisted with rage, and she raised a knife she had hidden under her sleeve. She lunged, but I swung the cane, hitting her wrist. The knife clattered to the floor. She screamed and tackled me, sending us both crashing to the ground. David fought with the guard, both grunting as they struggled for control of the bat. I could hear the sound of wood striking flesh, but I didn't know who was winning. Lisa pinned me, her hands around my throat. "Say goodbye, Mom," she hissed. Spots danced in my vision as she tightened her grip. With the last bit of strength I had, I reached for the sewing scissors on the nightstand and stabbed her in the arm. She screamed and rolled off me, clutching the wound. I scrambled to my feet, gasping for air. David finally overpowered the guard, knocking him out cold. The police sirens wailed outside. The alarm system had triggered during the fight. Lisa tried to run, But David grabbed her and held her down until the officers burst in. They dragged both Lisa and the corrupted guard away, cuffed and bleeding. Lisa twisted her head to glare at me, her voice shaking with rage. "This isn't over, Mom. You'll never be rid of me." The officers assured me this time she'd be placed in a federal facility, one she could never escape. But her words echoed in my mind long after they left. That night, as I sat with David in the wreckage of our living room, I whispered, "How many times can a mother survive losing her child?" He took my hand and said, "You're stronger than she'll ever understand." For a few weeks, peace returned. The police kept her under strict watch, and there were no more threats, no more packages. I started to believe maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was over. Then came the day of the trial. I had to testify against her, to look into the eyes of the daughter who wanted me dead. The courtroom was packed, the air heavy with tension. When they brought Lisa in, shackled and pale, she stared at me with a cold smile that sent chills down my spine. As I spoke, detailing every attempt on my life, she never broke eye contact. Not once. It was as if she was memorizing my every word, storing it away for later. The judge sentenced her to life in a maximum security prison. I should have felt relief, but as they led her away, she mouthed something to me. "This isn't over." Weeks passed without incident. I started rebuilding my life, redecorating the house, planting flowers in the yard. David moved in permanently, and for the first time in a long time I felt safe. Until one morning I found a single red rose on my porch. No note, no footprints, just the rose. My blood ran cold. The next night, the cameras caught a shadow moving outside the window. She was back. What happened next would lead to the final, most shocking confrontation of all. Don't miss the next chapter, where the last threads of this deadly game unravel. If this story keeps you on edge, like, comment and subscribe, because the ending will leave you breathless. The rose on the porch haunted me. Every time I walked past it, I felt her eyes on me. I threw it away, but the next morning another one appeared, this time with a thorn carefully placed in the center, as if it were mocking me. David was furious. "This means she's out again," he growled, pacing the living room. "How many times can the system fail us?" I called the police, but their response was chilling. "We have no record of her escape," they said. "She's still in custody." Yet I knew better. The rose wasn't just a flower. It was her calling card. Lisa was here, moving like a ghost where no one could see her. That night I double-checked every lock, every window. David kept the bat beside the bed. Still sleep wouldn't come. Around midnight, the cameras outside flickered, then went black. David shot out of bed. "She's cutting the power," he said, grabbing the flashlight. My hands trembled as I clutched the phone, dialing the police with shaking fingers. The storm outside howled louder, as if it were warning me. The house fell into total darkness. The only sounds were the rain against the windows and our breathing. Then came the footsteps, low, deliberate, coming from the back door. "She's inside," David whispered. We moved toward the living room, the flashlight beam trembling. Lightning flashed through the windows, and in that split-second glow, I saw her, standing at the top of the stairs, drenched and smiling. "Hello, Mom," Lisa said softly. "Miss me?" My heart nearly stopped. How are you here?" She took a slow step down. "You really thought they could hold me forever? Have friends everywhere. You can't keep me locked away." David raised the bat. "This ends tonight, Lisa. You won't touch her again." Lisa tilted her head, smirking. "Oh, David, always the savior. Do you even know what she's done to me? She gave you everything. She left me with nothing." I stepped forward, my voice shaking but strong. "You left yourself with nothing, Lisa. You chose greed. You chose hatred. You chose this life." Her eyes burned with fury. "No, you chose to betray me." She pulled something from her coat, a pistol. My breath caught in my throat. David stepped in front of me, shielding me with his body. "Put it down, Lisa. Don't do this." She aimed the gun, her hands trembling. "I'm taking back what's mine," she hissed. Lightning struck, and in the flash of light, David lunged at her. The gun went off, the deafening sound shaking the walls. I screamed as the two of them struggled, rolling down the stairs. The gun clattered across the floor, landing near my feet. Grabbed it. My hand shook so badly I could barely hold it, but I aimed it at Lisa. She stopped, breathing hard, her eyes locked on mine. "You won't shoot me, Mom," she said, her voice low. "You're too weak. You still love me." Tears streamed down my face. "I do love you, Lisa. But I can't let you destroy me." She took a step toward me. "Then do it. Pull the trigger." David groaned on the floor, blood seeping from his arm where the bullet had grazed him. "Eleanor, don't hesitate," he shouted. I swallowed hard, my finger tightening on the trigger. "Don't make me do this, Lisa." She smirked, her eyes wild. "You won't." The front door burst open. Police officers stormed in, shouting commands. Lisa froze, her arms raised as they tackled her to the ground. She screamed, kicking and biting, but they restrained her with heavy cuffs. "It's over," one officer yelled. I dropped the gun, my knees buckling. David crawled to me, clutching his arm. "You did it, Eleanor," he whispered. The officers dragged Lisa out, but as she was shoved into the car, she twisted her head and shouted, "You think you've won? You'll never see peace. I'll haunt you forever." For the next few days, the police kept me under protection. Lisa was transported to a federal prison states away, this time under 24-hour surveillance. They swore she would never escape again. David's arm healed, and slowly, life began to return to something like normal. But I couldn't shake her words. Would she haunt me forever? Weeks later, I received a letter from the prison. It was from Lisa. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside were only 5 words, scrawled in her jagged handwriting. "See you soon, Mommy dearest." I burned the letter, but the fear remained. The police assured me it was just a bluff. David said we were safe now. I wanted to believe them. But one night, while lying in bed, I heard a faint tapping on the window. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Slowly I turned my head. There, pressed against the glass, was a single red rose. The final confrontation was coming. I could feel it in my bones. What happened next would be the last chapter of this nightmare, where everything would end, one way or another. Stay with me for the next chapter, because the shocking finale will leave you speechless. If you've been gripped by this story, like, comment and subscribe, because the ending is something you'll never forget. The rose on the windowpane glistened with rainwater under the pale moonlight. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. David rushed into the bedroom when he heard my gasp. He saw it too. "She's here," he muttered, his voice tight with dread. We called the police immediately, but as usual, the storm outside drowned out any sense of security. They were on their way, but I knew they would be too late. Lisa wouldn't wait for them to arrive. I grabbed the pistol I had kept hidden under the bed since the last attack. My hands trembled as I loaded it. David stood beside me with the bat, his face pale but determined. "Eleanor," he said, his voice steady, "this ends tonight, one way or another." The tapping on the window stopped. Silence filled the house. Every muscle in my body tensed. Then came the sound of glass shattering downstairs. "She's in," David whispered. We moved quietly, step by step, down the hallway. The lights flickered as the storm raged outside, casting eerie shadows on the walls. When we reached the top of the stairs, we saw her standing in the living room, drenched, her hair plastered to her face. In her hand, she clutched a knife, gleaming under the faint light. "Mom," she said softly, almost sweetly, "you've made this so difficult. But it's time to end it. Lisa, stop this madness." I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. "You don't have to do this. Turn yourself in before it's too late." Her smile widened, twisted. "It's already too late. For you." She lunged up the stairs, knife raised. I fired a shot into the ceiling, the sound deafening. She froze halfway up, her eyes locking onto mine, wild and unblinking. You won't shoot me, she hissed. You're my mother. My hands trembled, but my voice was cold. You're not my daughter anymore. Not after everything you've done. David charged forward, knocking her down the stairs. The knife flew out of her hand, clattering across the floor. She screamed, thrashing as David pinned her down. Call them, Eleanor. Call the police, he shouted. But before I could dial, Lisa pulled a smaller blade from her boot and slashed at David's leg. He cried out, falling back. She scrambled to her feet, grabbing the larger knife again. I raised the gun, tears streaming down my face. Don't make me do this, Lisa, cried. She stepped toward me slowly, knife in hand, her eyes burning with hatred. You'll never have peace, Mom. Even if you kill me, I'll haunt you forever. I closed my eyes, whispered a prayer, and pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the house. When I opened my eyes, Lisa was on the floor, the knife slipping from her hand. Blood spread across her shirt. She coughed, her eyes softening for just a moment. Mom, she whispered, her voice trembling. I just wanted to be loved. Tears blurred my vision. I knelt beside her, holding her hand as the life drained from her eyes. You were always loved, Lisa, I sobbed. You just couldn't see it. The police stormed in seconds later, but it was too late. Lisa was gone. They confirmed it, covering her body with a sheet. David sat beside me, his leg bleeding, his face pale. It's over, he said quietly. But as they carried her out, I felt no victory, only an aching sadness that swallowed me whole. My daughter was gone, and though she had tried to destroy me, she had once been the little girl I rocked to sleep. In the weeks that followed, the house was repaired, the cameras replaced, and the wounds slowly began to heal. David recovered, and he stayed by my side. We rebuilt life piece by piece. The will remained unchanged. Everything went to David just as I had planned. Lisa's greed had cost her everything, and in the end, she had nothing but her own darkness. But sometimes at night, when the wind howls through the trees, I swear I hear her voice whispering, "You'll never see peace." And I wonder if she was right. Still I live on. I tend to my flowers, I laugh with David, and I choose to remember the Lisa who once hugged me tight and called me mommy. Because no matter what, that part of her existed too. And so, I leave you with this. Never underestimate the strength of a mother's will. Love can turn to pain, and pain can turn to survival. But no matter how dark the storm, you must stand firm. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If this story moved you, reminded you of the power of resilience, and kept you on the edge of your seat, please like, comment, and subscribe. Because this was not just a story, it was a battle. And I survived.